stand by for action.
Thanks for joining me. My name is Dave Milner. I am the Unpleasant Blind Guy, and I want to welcome you to part 2 of this episode of the Unpleasant Blind Guy on EDL Radio. Now remember, if you want to contact me with comments, questions, show suggestions, Awesome American suggestions, I'm available at UBG Contact on Twitter, or I can also be found as Dave Milner or Aggedor, that's Aggedor, on Mumblet, the Tea Party Community, Spreely, Minds, MeWe, or Gab. Now let's begin.
Yeah, what are you hearing from the ground about the situation in Iran? You've got more people that's involved who's on the ground, and I know it's a very dangerous situation for those people to let anything out what's going on, because the regime being as they are. But what are you hearing from the ground with your sources?
They're beyond furious. They are beyond furious. They are still protesting. They are coming out in the streets. They are coming out during the day, at night, in the universities. They're protesting. They're essentially putting their lives at risk. And you have to admire their bravery of going up against this regime, and they're being beaten, they're being killed, they're being tortured, but nevertheless they're chanting to the regime, "You are our ISIS." Soleimani, the terrorist that the U.S. government killed, is a murderer, and they're saying death to the dictator, death to the supreme leader. They're calling for him to resign. They're essentially calling for regime change. And this is not, our media in the West, unfortunately, has been the minimal coverage that they've been giving it. They've been saying, these are student protesters that are upset about the airliner that was shot down by the Iranian government. These protests have minimal to do with that, with that airline being shot down. Yes, the folks are upset that the regime killed those 170 plus people with that missile at the commercial airliner. But
have you heard that
the protests are much wider. They're much wider.
As I said, the thing that I did see, which our media is showing, is that people, where before they used to tread all over the Israeli flag and the American flag, people was walking around it, refusing to walk on the flag, and said, the USA's not our enemy, nor is Israel. You are. This is what the message was, and I thought, how brave these people are, Carmel. I look at it and go,
absolutely, it is remarkable, but let me add a small preference, and I've been responding to a lot of people that have been posting on social media that video. There's students at the Beheshtieh University in Tehran that are walking around the flags of America and Israel that are painted on the ground. But let me say this is not a new phenomenon. This has been going on for a number of years. It's unfortunate that our media in the U.S. and Europe and the West hasn't reported on it, but it's not a new phenomenon. The younger people, the older people, those that have no gripe against America or Israel have been avoiding stepping on those flags that the regime has put, on the ground, painted on the ground or left on the ground for people to walk around. To walk over. So this is not a new phenomenon, but it is remarkable.
Yeah, I mean, in all the presidents we've had over the time, there's only one president that's actually said, we stand with you, and actually threatened the regime, don't kill the protesters. And you see what the President Trump said about it. So, and it's the first time that we've actually, had a president that's standing with the people. Well, it's not actually stand, but that word, what he's saying, it must raise the spirits of the good people in Iran. That you got the President of the United States, who's behind you, who's there, and is watching very, very closely what happens. Unfortunately, there's still been people being shot, though. This is the sad thing. This is what I heard. There was a few people who were shot a couple of days ago, wasn't it, Carmel? You probably know more about it than me. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, there have been reports of a number of people that have been shot, killed. A lot of the internet has been shut down, so getting some of the footage or getting some of the information has been sporadic in recent days. But yes, the regime has gone forward. Nevertheless, they've ignored the president's messages not to kill the protesters. They've gone ahead and done it regardless because of their brutality. This regime wants to hold on to power no matter what. They will go to any extent. People typically do not recall what Soleimani, who was, that terrorist leader that was executed, was killed by the U.S. military. They don't recall what he said prior to him being killed. When those protests started back in November, he went on the record in the media over there, and he said, I am willing to kill myself and the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. We are willing to kill 20 million Iranians if that will prevent one tear from shedding from the eyes of the supreme leader. So this just shows you the extent of the brutality of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard that are loyal to the supreme leader and loyal to the regime. They will go to any extent.
I think when he was taken down, this shook him up. I actually see the mullahs actually shedding tears. Shedding tears, actually crying, because this guy had been taken out. And actually, he shouldn't have been, wherever he was, he shouldn't have been there in the first place. It went against the law or something or other that he's not allowed to be anywhere else, but he was doing it. He was doing it, flying quite freely. He didn't care. He thought he was untouchable, didn't he, Carmel? This guy.
Yeah, he felt. Indeed, he felt he was invincible. He felt that he was beyond reproach because he had gotten away with, all these nefarious terrorist actions for the last 2 decades. The different administrations and the Arab world, no one had really, done anything. No one had opposed him. He thought he was invincible and untouchable.
He must have had literally, I don't know, they talk about thousands, but it must have been hundreds of thousands of deaths on his hands.
Absolutely.
He must have been drenched in blood of the people that he'd seen, who then having killed.
More than 600 U.S. soldiers killed as a result of Soleimani's involvement in Iraq. Thousands of U.S. soldiers injured from roadside bombs and other attacks. Hundreds of thousands of Syrians during this bloodbath, starting from 2011, orchestrated by large part from Soleimani in Syria, Lebanon, Iraq. So he had the blood of thousands of Muslims, non-Muslims, a devious, nefarious person, and no one should be shedding a tear of him being eliminated. And you saw Iranians celebrating.
We find the Democrats were shedding tears quite openly about the president taking out this most evil person. And it shows you of what the Democrats are really like, doesn't it? It was embarrassed to hear them say these things. It was almost as though they was a part of the regime themselves, the way some of them were talking. I don't know if you got that feeling, Carmel. It was disgusting. Absolutely disgusting.
Absolutely. I was shocked. Personally, I was very shocked to see leaders and some members of the Democrat elected officials actually opposing what happened. I think it's a shame that they've taken this to political levels. This person was committing crimes against humanity, and all the world should stand up and applaud what happened. It should not, fall into this political sphere and political bickering, and it is shameful that anyone in the U.S. or in the free world would oppose him being taken out. There were a lot of pundits that said, oh, now the Iranian people are going to rally around the regime and this will backfire and whatnot. And that was bogus. That was completely bogus. Yes. After the Soleimani funerals, you saw people protesting against the regime and actually tearing up Soleimani's picture and setting his picture on fire in Iran. So they had no love for him either.
One of his pictures being torn off the wall. I think there was another one, but they just showed you a little snippet of one of these posters being ripped from the wall. And I thought, wow, and I thought myself, the person who done it, I thought, you don't know the eyes of the world on you. I just hope you're not recognised. Do you know what I mean, Carmel? That's what I thought when I saw that. And God bless them for what they did. I mean, it's showing now that the world that, your great people are not putting up with it. And I know there's been a lot of bloodshed, and there probably will be continue to be bloodshed until the regime does fall. It will fall. I can't see a future for them. Now, it seems like Europe is turning against the regime, especially with this nuclear deal. So, I mean, things are falling apart around them. But as I say, it's like, as you say, they're not going to give in without a fight, and it could be really quite nasty at their end of their rule. And I think you would agree with that, wouldn't you, Carmel?
Absolutely. You have a population of, Iran's total population is a little over 80 million. And the vast majority of people in that country, I would say 75 to 80%, are under age 40. And they are looking at social media. Exactly. They're the new young generation. They're looking at they're looking at the world, they're looking at social media, and they're saying, why not us? Why can't we have these opportunities? Why can't we have these jobs? Our country has so much wealth as far as natural resources. Why are we being deprived of these economic opportunities and also freedoms? And there is no way in hell for this regime, as brutal as it is, to stop this massive tidal wave of humanity demanding freedom. It is impossible. Even if they, and I hope they don't. Yeah, I hope they don't. Slaughter the masses. But even if they do choose to do that, this regime cannot prevail. Just numerically, it would be impossible.
God bless all those good people that's standing up against this regime of inhumanity. As I say, in the end, evil never will prevail. I believe in that, and I'm sure you do. That in the end, through the things that's happening with the bloodshed, freedom has to be fought, and sometimes you have to shed your blood and your life, to sacrifice, and that's what we're seeing. And the Persian people, and that's what I call it Persian, because you're an old race. It's an old race, isn't it? And they're proud. And I would say, if I was a younger man and I had more business, I would like to join in the fight and to help in whatever way I could the people, because they are, in my eyes, are very very proud of what they're doing, because we live in a world where there's so much evil exists, but there's good people who stands up, and it doesn't matter, no matter what happens to them, they're going to fight against the evil out there, and that's what we're seeing. But Carmel, I've got Dave here, and I know he's been sitting very quietly. I'm sure he's got a few questions to ask you. And it's so good to hear your voice again, though, Carmel. It's always
my
good
pleasure.
To hear you,
Thank you for having me. And let me just say that the fact that you're speaking about this and supporting those protesters is tremendous. It is something that they are grateful to. And even though you may not be physically with them, the fact that you're raising awareness about their condition and their plight, I think, is applauded by them and appreciated.
Oh, well, bless you. I mean, we will always be talking about the plight of what's going on in Iran, and that's why it's so good. We're so glad to have you join us, because you've really, you know what's going on out there, and you give us so much information. I hope you'll be a regular guest to the show, because you're a pretty awesome gentleman in your own rights, with your own journalistic rights, etc. What you've been doing. But can I pass it over to Dave? And because I've been taking up all this time, and Dave's got so many questions he's got to ask you. But as I say, so good to have you join us tonight. I know you're a busy man as well, Carmel, but good to have you here, brother. God bless you.
Thank you.
Dave?
Right, Carmel. Yes, right, Carmel. Now, let me dial this back just a bit here. You and Jeff discussed quite a bit. In the Hearts and Minds Department, because as you know only too well, call it Western media or whatever you want to call it over here has painted one picture of Iran, and then there's the truth. And one of the memes, let's say, one of the things that they've said about the Iranian people is that they do not want any interference from the outside world at all. I'm talking about the people, not the regime. They don't want any interference from the outside world at all. They think President Trump is a war criminal. They hate President Trump. They hate Americans. They hate people from the UK, and things of that nature. And they're just protesting over gas prices and of course the plane being shot down and things of that nature. But underlying it, they still fully support the mullahs, and they have absolutely no patience for the West or any interference at all, particularly from President Trump, who they see as Satan. Now, how much of that is real, and how much of that is as you put it, so rightly, bogus?
I think that the vast majority of the U.S. and European Western media have been reporting basically bogus information about the people in Iran. They've been parroting what the regime has been feeding them. It is shameful. It is not journalism. I've been a reporter for 20 years, and there's something called objectivity and facts, and I have seen none of that from any of the major, news media. There are a few that have been reporting some accurate stories, but the vast majority have not. To be honest with you, we can't trust them. We can't trust our U.S. media, unfortunately, European media, because they're in bed with the regime. You just need to look at what the people in Iran are saying. Go on social media, look at the videos, look at their statements, look at their actions. They're tearing up pictures of Soleimani. They're tearing up pictures of the supreme leader. They're refusing to walk over the flags of Israel and America. They are sending thousands of messages through social media thanking President Trump for supporting them, thanking President Trump for taking out Soleimani. They are posting pictures of cakes and cookies and pastries with notes on them saying, "Thank you, President Trump, for taking out Soleimani. He was our murderer." You are seeing them chanting in the streets, "America is not our enemy. Our enemy is here in Iran." So I look at, what's on the ground as opposed to what our media is, quote-unquote, reporting. I think an important fact that a lot of Americans and Europeans do not realize is when any Western media goes to Iran, before they go to Iran, they need to get special visas. The Iranian intelligence ministry must vet, quote-unquote, vet any foreign reporters before they are given a visa. They are certainly not going to give a visa to any U.S. or foreign media that are not going to be sympathetic to them, that are not going to toe their line. So you had NBC, ABC, CNN, these other vast number of other media outlets going to Iran and parroting what the regime is saying. And when they do get there, the regime gives them a handler, and the regime gives them a translator. How can any of that reporting be unbiased? How can any of that reporting be objective? How can we give any credibility when the Iranian regime is basically controlling what those Western or U.S. media outlets are reporting? And those reporters, shame on them. Shame on them for going to Iran. And even if they aren't, even if they are going to Iran, shame on them for not adding a comment afterwards saying, hey, we were restricted. We went into Iran to get their side of the story, but we were restricted. We were prohibited from talking to certain people, or we had handlers. They didn't say any of that during the Soleimani funeral, and they just parroted the regime's talking points.
Shills for the regime? Sorry about that, Dave. Shilling for the regime. That's who they are, those reporters. Absolutely. So people need to take into consideration that even U.S. and Western media that go into Iran are being either pressured to report a certain way that the regime wants, or are complicit and just parroting what the regime says. Because if they are objective and give the true facts, they'll never be allowed back into Iran. So this is my problem with the Western media's coverage. I hope you don't mind that. There was a reporter that was on the ground when Iran fired those missiles. I think it's 12 missiles that they fired. And the guy that was there said he'd been told that over 30 military American troops had been killed. And it was untrue. It's what he was told by them. And it was unfounded. So this guy needs to lose his job. I mean, because he was just being a propagandist. That's the word, isn't it, Carmel? A propagandist for the regime.
Absolutely. Most definitely. And unfortunately, there isn't anyone in our media or, in the public sphere, elected officials that are calling out their outrageous coverage. Those of us journalists in the Iranian community here in the U.S. who know what this regime is about and how they control all aspects of life in Iran know this. We're trying to get out the message that, they're being manipulated. Our U.S. media is being manipulated either willingly or unwillingly. I just wish that there was someone that would stand up and say, hey, you know what? We went into Iran. We covered what the regime allowed us to cover. But as a side note, this is what, we were prohibited from reporting when they came out. But none of them did, and it's shameful.
Part of that.
And you being a journalist yourself, you must feel, that their reporting on things isn't what you learned as a journalist yourself, to be truthful about things. They've been told to lie, and they're doing it willingly, aren't they, Carmel? That's what they're doing. They're doing it willingly.
You could see it in the Soleimani coverage. They all clamored to go to Iran and cover that spectacle. It was a shameful propaganda media spectacle. All aspects of it. They tried to project this image that the majority of the people in Iran loved Soleimani and supposedly were sorry for, his loss. It was a sham. It was a show.
Yeah.
The people of Iran were in reality opposed to him.
Most of us, we're pretty savvy, aren't we, Carmel? We know that was a sham. It was especially put on the display to show the wider world how much people cared about this person. And it was just there that they was paid to do what they were doing by the regime, wasn't it? These people were paid to do that.
Many were paid. Some were regime supporters. Some were under duress. Yeah. You didn't hear from the Western media reporting on that sham funeral that a lot of people were threatened. They said, if you do not, the regime's thugs went to their homes and businesses and said, if you do not go out and protest and mourn, publicly mourn, you will be executed or imprisoned, or your family members will be, put under some, evil actions. Also, you didn't hear the reports of Iraqis and Syrians and Afghans who were Shiite. They were bussed in from, thousands of miles away into Tehran for this spectacle.
Wow, I didn't hear that. I didn't know this, Carmel. Thank you for that.
This is something that the media did not.
I didn't know that.
This is something the media did not report. But, I know of this, and, those that are in contact with the protesters and folks on the ground in Iran know this. They saw these buses rolling into the capital, Tehran, with a bunch of foreigners, Afghans and Iraqis and Syrians coming out and being, given flags and marched out. And there was yet another group of people that they're hungry. They're just hungry, starving people, and the regime said, if you come out and publicly mourn for Soleimani, we'll give you a free meal, a free drink, we'll fill your bellies. Well, of course those people are going to come. But you didn't hear any of that. You didn't hear any of that in the media.
Information about those people being busted. I don't know if Dave, did you know this? I didn't know that people was being bussed in. Thank you, Carmel, because we didn't know that.
And that is it for this time. Next time, Part 3. I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for listening, and may your God go with you. Goodbye. The Unpleasant Blind Guy is copyright 2020. Anno Domini. Now for Dave's Canes. Extras that help you navigate the new media world.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
From a public locker inside a dilapidated Long Island rail station comes a show designed to piss off liberals using truth, facts, and ridicule. The Lid Radio Show, featuring the conservative voice from the People's Republic of New York, the Lid himself, Jeff Dunitz. Tune in every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Network. Go to shrmedia.com. At Lid Radio, we fight for the truth, justice, and a good kosher T-bone. If you don't listen, Hillary Clinton might sneak into your bedroom in her housecoat late at night and blame you for her election loss. It's the Lid Radio Show with Jeff Dunitz.
This is Shannon Wright of The Right Way with Shannon and Mike in the AM. Mike's not here, so I gotta talk fast. You gotta join us. Fall season. getting ready to start up with a whole bunch of new stuff. News and food and politics and sports and entertainment and a whole bunch of stuff. But wait, Mike's coming. I gotta go. Remember, Shannon and Mike in the AM on SHR Media, Monday through Thursday, 7 to 9 a.m. Make sure you tune in.
Featuring right thinking from a left brain and doing the job the American maggots won't. BZ is fundamentally changing America one diaper at a time. Just when safety pin manufacturers are running out of metal for the diapers of the leftists, where the speech is free, but the drinks are not. The Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon can be heard every Tuesday and Thursday night, commencing at 11 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Pacific, where pushback is a requisite art form in and of itself. Let your ossicles be truly liberated when you listen to the Bloviating Zeppelin's Berserk Bobcat Saloon, only on SHR Media Network. No ferrets were harmed in the making of this ad.
Join me, Jack Alexander, for the Jack Alexander Experiment podcast, as I take a unique outsider's look at the issues affecting the USA. I fearlessly take on the issues that everyone else is too scared to touch. The Jack Alexander Experiment podcast is available wherever good podcasts can be found, like Spreaker, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcast. The Jack Alexander Experiment, because it's not a matter of left versus right, it's a matter of right versus wrong.
It's your business diva here, Melanie Collette. I am inviting you to a front row seat as I discuss some of the most intriguing details of wealth and finance with today's movers and shakers in the world of business. Listen in and discover financial truths on a global, domestic, and household scale. Uncover topics that will impact your wallet today and in the future. Money Talk with Melanie airs Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. East, 2 p.m. West, right here on SHR Media and High Plains Pundit Talk Radio. You can't afford to miss it.
Featuring the effervescent contrarian sackheads Clint, plus the unrestrained bulbosity of BZ, the Sackheads Against Tyranny is a real chat show. Doubling your late-night conservative talk show pleasure with double the hosts, you can listen every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. Please note, some contents may have settled during shipping. Member FDIC, batteries not included, warranty void in Montenegro.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.